welcome to today's Wildcat lecture. My name is Carmen Pang and I'm with SWAG, the Singapore Wildcat Action Group. And it's very exciting to see so many of you joining us on a kind of gray Sunday morning in Singapore, all eager to learn about the fishing cat, which is an elusive wildcat species of which not much is really known. So we're very looking forward to Vanessa's presentation today. But before we proceed, let me just take care of a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, we'll be recording today's session, and a recording will be available on the SWAG YouTube channel later on. And you will find a link to our YouTube channel in the chat. So please click on it and subscribe to our channel. And also, can I remind everybody to mute your microphone throughout the lecture and to use the chat function to ask questions and post your comments. We'll be monitoring the chat and we'll ask the submitted questions after the presentation. And also for your comments, may I remind everyone to keep the comments friendly and civil. So now that that's taken care of, as many of you already know, we created SWAG to increase awareness of wildcat conservation in Singapore, and more importantly, to support MyCat, the Malaysian Conservation Alliance for Tigers. So if you'd like to learn more about SWAG, you can also find links to our website and our social media pages in the chat box below. Rachel, also from SWAG, is going to type in all the addresses. And you can also, from our webpage, you will be able to access our Twitter, our Facebook, our Instagram as well. And so today, in addition to having this lecture on fishing cat, this week in particular is very special for all of us at SWAG, as well as for MyCat. And here to tell you more is my fellow SWAGger and co-host, Dr. Vilma Di Rosario, who will also be introducing our speaker later on. So Vilma, the screen is yours.
Thanks, Carmen. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to this session. Just a minute. It's always the case, right? It won't move. Okay, let me see, what can I do now? I'll stop share and try it again. Okay, that's great. Morning again, everyone. So as Carmen says, our group SWAG got together to work for the Malayan tiger as volunteers. And why? Well, the Malayan tiger was a native resident of Singapore, and many records were, made in the 1830s. Unfortunately, the last tiger was shot in 1930, and it's locally extinct in Singapore. And the Malayan tiger is globally critically endangered now, with less than 200 Malayan tigers left in Malaysia. Once there are no more in Malaysia, that's it. We've lost our Malayan tiger. So SWAG members and many others, joined together from Singapore in 2015 to work with the Malaysian Conservation Alliance for Tigers, or MyCat. And MyCat is an alliance of 5 NGOs: the Malaysian Nature Society, Traffic Southeast Asia, the Wildlife Conservation Society, the Wildlife Society of Selangor, and WWF Malaysia. And these NGOs are strongly supported by the Malaysian government, the Department of Wildlife and National Parks, Perhilitan. So since 2015, 300 of us citizen conservationists from Singapore went to Pahang for catwalks, Citizen Action for Tigers. And Citizen Action for Tigers is an anti-poaching, anti-deforestation surveillance walk by volunteers. And what we do is we walk the forest edge and look for illegal activities like snares and maybe traps, illegal logging, illegal mining, and we report it into the authorities. The walks are organized by MyCat, and we also help MyCat collect data on wildlife. You can see Rachel and Ray setting up a camera trap, which we do. We set up camera traps and we help maintain the camera traps where we're on a catwalk. And it's always a great pleasure to see the animals that the camera has captured, that walked the same trail that we have walked. So it's just ordinary people like myself who go out there and really are empowered to take action to save the Malayan tiger and other wildlife in the forest, mainly from poaching. On a catwalk, we also plant trees. However, catwalks are on hold now because of COVID-19 pandemic. Our last catwalk was in February of this year, and no other catwalks from Singapore have happened. And it's unlikely that there will be any more this year. So catwalks are on hold. And we still want to help the tiger. So we're thinking what we could do. Anyway, although we are not there, the Orang Asli, or the indigenous Batik tribe of Pahang, are able to do the ranger patrols. They are hired by MyCat to protect tigers and restore tiger habitats, and they also do reforestation. So unlike ourselves, we go there as volunteers, we pay to do the patrols. The Orang Asli, or the community rangers, receive a salary from MyCat. And for a whole year, MyCat intends to, or actually is hiring 50 men and women to form these community ranger patrols and to do reforestation. And they require $100,000 per year. The community rangers are great because they know the forest, they are forest people, and they can go further into the forest than we can. And they are currently looking out for poachers and poaching sign, and also collecting data on wildlife for MyCat. So SWAG has thought of the idea of how, of raising funds. And we're going to just share very quickly with you about the SWAG 100 challenge. There are 30 volunteers, 30 of us from SWAG, who are each going to walk 100 kilometers, a total of 3,000 kilometers within 1 month, to raise $10,000. We started on Friday, the 25th of September, and that's a very special day because that marks 10 years of Citizen Action for Tigers catwalk. And for the 300 of us who have come from, who have gone from Singapore to Malaysia to walk on a catwalk, I think it's very special, for us that catwalk has come such a long way and celebrates 10 years. So we want to congratulate MyCat on that. So it started, today is day 3, and we are going to go on walking till the 25th of October. What can you do to help? Well, we really would appreciate any amount that you can donate. Please use our global giving SWAG 100 challenge donation platform. You can see the link there, and Rachel will be typing it in the chat. Please also cheer us on. Some of us, like Carmen and I, were wearing our running shirts. It's the Swag 100 Challenge shirt, and you can see it on the right-hand side of your screen. If you see us running by the beach or in the forest or in town, please come up to us and say hi. Please cheer us on. Also share about what we're doing. Follow us on our Instagram and Facebook channels, and share our hashtag, which is hashtag Swag 100 Challenge. Please, do give any amount we'll be grateful with that. Help us raise $10,000 US for tigers. We're also raising funds for our own native leopard cat. That's the last remaining wildcat in Singapore. Very precious. We've heard from our speaker before, Marcus Chua, that there are probably only 30 leopard cats left in Singapore. So they're really, really precious. And we've been selling this lovely leopard cat tote bag. The design was done by Rachel Lee, our volunteer, and 100% of profits from the sale of this bag will go toward leopard cat conservation. We have started our Love Our Leopard Cats campaign, and we are looking into roadkill and how can we create more awareness about roadkill on our roads. This will not only help save leopard cats, but it'll help save pangolins, long-tailed macaques, sambar deer, and wild pigs and other wildlife on our roads. So please go to our SWAG website, and we only have 8 of these bags left. We really want to sell all, so please help us. Thank you. Now, it gives me a great pleasure on behalf of SWAG to introduce our speaker for today, Vanessa Herranz Muñoz. Vanessa, we were connected to Vanessa by Dr. Jim Sanderson, who is an expert in small wildcat conservation and from the Small Wildcat Conservation Foundation. And thank you for many members who are from the foundation and the group who are tuning in today from different parts of the world. So Vanessa is calling in now from Phnom Penh. She's the founder of Kla Trey. Kla Trey means fishing tiger, and it's the name for the fishing cat in Cambodia. Kla Trey is the Cambodian fishing cat project. Vanessa is also a member of the IUCN Fishing Cat Working Group, and she is also in the IUCN SSC Otter Specialist Group. She's going to share with us about the approaches that her group is taking to conserve the fishing cat in their mangrove home. And what's very interesting is this group is working with all stakeholders. We are very interested to hear about your work, Vanessa, with the government, with other NGOs, and with the local people to protect the fishing cat. So Vanessa, over to you. Let me stop my screen. Over to you, Vanessa.
Hello, everyone. I will share my presentation right now. Here we go. Okay. So hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be sharing my work with you today. And I've designed this cover of the presentation with my very latest camera trap photo of a fishing cat from the mangroves, because it's one of the best ones ever. You see this female, we've been seeing her for a few years, and is now crossing the shallow waters in the middle of the mangrove forest. We can even see her reflection, and I usually put the camera set up to take photo and a video, and in the video we see how it's actually walking very, very slowly. I think they're fishing, taking the opportunity when the shallow waters come into the mangroves. In my presentation, besides telling you about our work, like Vilma mentioned, I've tried to put lots of photos, and I will share lots of camera trap videos, because I feel very privileged to be watching the intimate life of these amazing wild animals, and I get to see so many videos, and I get to see so many beautiful scenes that no one else does. So I want to share this with all of you today. For example, this is the same exact place, but this is a different female and a different angle. They sometimes move around during the day, and they go slowly like this. You can even hear the water. It feels like you're inside the mangroves. That's what I love about this way of studying the wildlife. And here, this is the same female. She's coming to take a little rest here in front of this amazing tree. This tree must be a few hundred years old. The mangroves that we're working in Cambodia have some corners left that are very well conserved and really ancient, and it's a privilege to be able to work here. I'll tell you a little bit about me first. I was crazy about wildcats since I was like 2 years old. My mom took me to the zoo, and I was taken aback by the tigers. I was impressed by them at about 2 years old. And then at 12, I discovered the clouded leopard, and I decided, okay, so that's what I'll do with my life. I will go and research and protect rare cats in Southeast Asia. And it's what has eventually happened. I was an activist from a very early age in my hometown back in Spain, up in the mountains. We did tree planting and paper recycling very early on. Then I moved to the UK and I studied psychological sciences. I studied zoology. Later on, I became a keeper, animal keeper, and an educator. So I got to interact with wildcats very closely. Then I started my own NGO to try and promote conservation, sometimes together with captive facilities. Then I did my master's, learning all that I could learn about camera trapping and how to use it for conservation. And in Europe, eventually, I ended up working for the European Commission, helping write guidance for how zoological institutions can contribute to conservation. So after this is when I came to Cambodia, and then I've been working with the fishing cat that is also now going to be part of my PhD with KMUTT University in Thailand. So in 2014, I came to Cambodia to study the fishing cat. And this is the introduction of the fishing cat. I made this, this infographic for the fishing cat project in India, where the fishing cat is also the top predator of the marshlands, not only the mangroves. These are the characteristics of the fishing cat. It's about 10 to 15 kilo cat, so like a medium-sized dog. It's serious size, and it's bulky, it's strong, and muscly. It's got short legs and short tail in proportion to the body, and the head is big and strong as well. The tail, it said that sometimes it uses it as a rudder to swim, and the fur is waterproof. It's got 2 layers so that the water just slides over it. It's got small round ears and big eyes and big nose in proportion, so the face is quite characteristic, and the feet are webbed to be able to swim more effectively. Its prey in the wetlands is mostly fish, but it will also take snakes, crabs, rodents, frogs, water birds. It will also depend on what is available. And the claws are only semi-retractable. So when we're walking in the mangroves on the mud, we might be able to see the footprints that still mark a little bit of the claw, which is quite characteristic, but might also make it easy to confuse with dogs. So, like Vilma mentioned, our project is part of the Fishing Cat Working Group, which has now become the Fishing Cat Conservation Alliance, which is a registered NGO now in the US, so that we can gather more funding for projects throughout the region. Here you see, I will use my cat, my little cursor cat, to show you this is the distribution of fishing cats. Fishing cats are in Sri Lanka, in the coast of India and Bangladesh, up in Nepal. They are in Myanmar, in some spots in Thailand, here in Cambodia. We can no longer find them in Vietnam and Java. And these are some of the projects, the main projects that we're working together throughout the range, trying to coordinate our efforts to conserve the fishing cat. Here in Cambodia, by the time I got here in 2014, there was only one camera trap picture of a fishing cat taken in 2003. And also in a slightly strange place up here on the north, in a forest, not far from rivers and wetlands, but not very much the ideal habitat. There were some other clues, but they were not very reliable. During the 90s, fishing cats were captured around the Tonle Sap, but there was no indication of where exactly they had come from. And they were the population that's now captive in Phnom Tamao Rescue Center, where they've bred in captivity, but there was hardly any other evidence from the wild. So when I got here, I started working with the Center for Biodiversity Conservation, which is an initiative of the Royal University of Phnom Penh and Flora and Fauna International to run masters in conservation. So I came to help the masters and to help with this project to find priority sites for fishing cat in Cambodia. So we went to these 5 sites where you see the red arrow to set up camera traps and try finding fishing cats there. The first one is up here. This is around the Great Tonle Sap Lake. These are amazing wetlands that are connected to the Mekong River. The Mekong River comes down into Cambodia from here, from the border with Laos. And in the rainy season, the Mekong swells so much that the flow in Phnom Penh, which would be right about here, turns around and then it starts going northwards towards the Tonle Sap, and the Tonle Sap swells to twice its capacity into wonderful flooded forests around. So this has always been wonderful fishing cat habitat. We looked for fishing cats there and along the coast. So I'm going to tell you about that search a little bit now. This is a picture of the Tonle Sap in the dry season when we first went there. You see this heron is standing in just a few centimeters of water, and the Tonle Sap looks like a gigantic, really flat, really quiet sea. In the map here, you can see how much it swells. In the rainy season, all the blue area would be water, would be part of the lake, and then the flooded forest still extend a little bit farther from there. This is what the villages around the flooded forest in the Tonle Sap look like. They are floating in the water, and in the dry season they're close to the main rivers, and in the rainy season sometimes they have to move out a few meters up to drier sites. I like these pictures because we can still see the trees of the flooded forest really clearly. All of this area of green in the wet season would be covered by water. In this area in the north, there is a Ramsar site called Pectoal, which is where we went to look for fishing cats. There is amazing water bird colonies, at least about 15 species of large water birds like pelicans that we see here, and adjutants, darters. I've never seen so many great birds together. It's a wonderful place to visit. Here we place our camera traps and we try to find fishing cats. And then this is very near Angkor Wat, the most famous archaeology site in Cambodia that everyone comes to visit. Right now I'm showing you a photo of Bayon Temple. At the same time that we went to put cameras near there, it was my first visit to Angkor Wat, so I went to have a look. And here in Bayon Temple, which is the one with the smiley Buddhas, you can see a little bit there, I found this carving on the wall of the everyday life, representing everyday life of Cambodia at the time, that has these boats with fish under the boats, with a crocodile. And then I saw this animal that's got a long body, and it's got short legs and a short tail, and it's right under the water. So what I found here is a Kla Trey. It's a fishing cat. It was very well known in the Angkorian times. It was part of the everyday life, going out to the river to fish and see the fishing cats, the Kla Trey, swimming in the river and trying probably to take some fish from the fishermen. So that's what inspired me to name the project Kla Trey later on. In this trip that we first went to look for fishing cats, we had to go also into the jungles, in the Cardamom Mountains, and we saw beautiful, beautiful jungles and rivers where we tried to look for them in smaller wetlands. Like this spot is a clearing in the forest that gets flooded and water birds are attracted to it, and had this beautiful tree also as a this. I was taken aback by the beauty of the tree, so I can't really say much more to that. So we tried to put our cameras there to find fishing cat and went on to look for more places. But what we found in this particular area is an example of the threats. We found the end of the forest, the areas that had been cleared for other purposes. The ranger that was there with us didn't know that this area had been cleared already, and is there just looking for some footprints of the animals that we could still see in the sand. Animals had been there hours before looking for their home. And this clearing had a huge extension. It's part of economic land concessions that change the landscape. In the same area, we also found poaching camps. So this will be what's remaining from poachers staying there for a number of nights at a time, using all sorts of methods to hunt animals, snares, guns, and then leaving all this rubbish behind. So this was a sad visit, but we could still see beautiful places that are still standing in these particular areas, but they're taking very hard work on the part of authorities and NGOs to protect. After this, with Red Taut, she was the main researcher for this first part of the project. We went down to the mangroves, and that somehow the mangroves already felt more hopeful. We put our cameras there with the help of Jeremy Holden, an important photographer that knows how to find good spots, and local guides that had told us, yes, we know Kla Trey, and Kla Trey just lies on this little beach here, and I see it all the time. So we were really, really hoping for good results here. And we also put cameras in the Malaluka forest, which is a really strange kind of habitat with the shallow waters that turn red and these very white papery bark trees. It was really quite a ghostly, strange looking habitat. And here we got what we were looking for. When we came back, we found these videos of fishing cat. Here we see, this is a male, and it's gonna do the dance. There you have it. This is the fishing cat dance. He's moving his paws to leave marks, leaving these chemical marks for the female to find, and now he's licking the floor to find the female's marks. When he's licking, he's driving the chemical marks up the vomeronasal organ on the palate so that they go directly to the brain. And this way they can get so much more information. You will see they lick and then they open their mouth doing the Fleigman response. That means that all that information gets into so much more detail in the brain. It's something that we can't really imagine what it's like, but it would be like, for us looking at social media now, you know so much more about people. And then what we realized was that we had other videos with a different fishing cat that comes around the same place and then starts sniffing around the spots where the male had been dancing, because this is our female. So we were so lucky. We got the male leaving the marks and the female finding those marks. You see they're wet. They've come to this spot swimming and walking on the mud. You can still see the mud on their paws. So she smells, she sniffs exactly on the same spot, very carefully looking for that information, probably both ready for an encounter very soon, for mating. Now she does the same. She's licking the floor. She's she's opening her mouth to get all that information straight to the brain, saying how long has it been since the male was here? Is he now ready for marking? Is he a good quality male that I know of? So yeah, we were so happy to find this, and we realized that over a number of visits, or actually about 3 visits each, we had a male and a female that were looking for each other and most likely breeding in this area. So that was such a huge success of the little project, and we were so happy to find them. So with these findings, we were invited to attend the first International Fishing Cat Conservation Symposium in Nepal. And we first met all these wonderful people, including Dr. Jim Sanderson, that became also our mentor and started helping us start a project in Cambodia, started connecting all of these projects together. And for the first time, we had proceedings with all the information put together, and our first attempt at a collaborative strategy for everyone throughout the range. And what we personally did was start applying for funding to start a fishing cat project, because the main project had finished at that point. And together we also carried out the next assessment for fishing cat, where they used to be listed as endangered, but we found ourselves that we had to downlist the fishing cat to vulnerable, not because they were in any less danger than before, but because we had more information available. Luckily, because it had been classified as endangered for a few years before, between 2009 and this assessment in 2015, more projects had been able to start, and then we had more information, and we knew that especially between India and Bangladesh, there were more fishing cats than we had thought previously. So the situation wasn't as worrying. However, here in Southeast Asia, the situation is quite critical. We found, this little population of fishing cat in Cambodia. We know there are a few spots in Thailand, but like I mentioned before, we're pretty sure they're gone from Vietnam and from Java. With this, I continued working on other projects, but that allowed me to go around Cambodia visiting beautiful wetlands. This is, for example, a wetland around the river Mekong that would also be a really good place for fishing cats, and eventually we'll explore. But just the landscapes are absolutely incredible. The wetlands in Cambodia are something that outside of this world, and I really want to convey to you. We were around with a project with Conservation International, actually doing a situational analysis of the communities, the natural resources, and communities' adaptability to climate change. And this was in 2016, when it was one of the first really strong droughts in the region that we were already feeling the effects. For example, in this same community, as they were telling us what was happening and how the drought was affecting the crops, we could see people having to take their water buffaloes to little paddles to water them, because there wasn't enough water available for the water buffaloes to just sit there. And some of the areas very similar to Praktol, but farther south, also full of waterbeds, already had been affected by fires. We can see the trees that had been slightly burned in these areas, and then other parts of flooded forest that had already burned completely. Sometimes there was a point in which we were in the middle of the lake going on the boat to reach some of these remote floating villages, and I could see from the boat more than 10 fires at different spots just blazing the flooded forest. It was tremendously sad to see. So our situational analysis that we published at the point was really warning that steps needed to be taken to adapt to climate change and to provide communities with tools to fight and stop forest fires. and really help communities find ways to survive sustainably and to adapt to the impacts of climate change that were clearly coming our way already. These are all the wetlands that we also visited along the Mekong. And again, the landscapes are absolutely beautiful. In the Mekong, you also have the opportunity to kayak along these wetlands and feel really close to this beautiful habitat. And you can also see, it's very loud. Those were the Mekong dolphins. They're very loud Mekong dolphins. I might just talk about them a little bit, but go back so you can see them. This is a video actually from last weekend. We were on the Mekong, and the Irrawaddy dolphins that are in danger, only about 80 dolphins left in the Mekong. They actually came really, really close to us. So even though it's a bit loud, I just want to show you a few seconds because I've never seen them so close. And I think you would enjoy seeing these dolphins. So yeah, it was wonderful to be able to see the dolphins like that, and that is in Krati in the Mekong wetlands and in the Mekong River. The Mekong River actually gets really, really deep, and that's how fish can migrate and then come to the Tonle Sap to breed, and that's and then it has really deep pools. That's where the dolphins live. So that's another worthwhile place to visit in Cambodia. So we got to the point here in 2017 when we were so lucky. We got some funding from Panthera and Mohammed bin Sajid and other funders, and we established the fishing cat, Cambodian fishing cat project with some of the graduates from the masters at the CBC, and we started working in the mangroves to protect and study the fishing cat. When we got to the mangroves, we started engaging with the community straight away. We provided information about the fishing cat in general. Everyone knew the fishing cat. They called the Kla Trey. They saw it very often. We asked around, where do they see them? Is there a conflict? We found out that in the past, there was certain conflict because they would raid the fishing nets, and sometimes people would kill them in retaliation. And this had happened a couple of times in the past couple of years. But the local people also told us that because fishing habits were changing, and now getting crabs in small crab traps was the most profitable system of fishing, the conflict was much reduced, and people didn't really have great animosity against the fishing cat. And everyone, and especially the children, were really happy to learn more about the fishing cat. In collaboration with another NGO, we provided lots of posters as well, mentioning that fishing cat is a protected species in Cambodia, and the mangroves are in a wildlife sanctuary, so any activity to harm fishing cats is illegal. And we try to visit every community within the mangroves that is in touch with fishing cats. Throughout our work, we've done a number of activities with communities. After we had our our camera traps, we came back to communities, and we also showed the photos that we had of people. We had a little exhibition with photos of people, and everyone that came to see the photos and recognize themselves, we gave them a fishing cat refillable bottle to start like making closer connections with people in the community. And we even had locals like this guy doing the fishing cat, doing the Kla Trey in front of the camera. So I think we've managed to have a good and friendly relationship with the community that, you know, farther down the line, I think it's going to mean that we can collaborate and work together in the conservation of the species and the mangrove forest. When we got there, we very early on, we got this beautiful, beautiful photo of fishing cat that this is my favorite, and it's been my favorite since, because this is the best photo that we got. This is the same female that was doing the dancing in 2015. And I got a very recent picture now in 2020. So this female has been happily, healthily living there for more than 5 years, which goes to confirm that these mangroves are a fantastic refuge for the species. And there are other individuals that we've been following for years, and yet it's actually very, very difficult to count the number of individuals and to actually get all the fishing cats that are there, because that's how difficult to access these areas of mangroves are. Eventually, we did get a few different fishing cats. This is an example of how we try to identify them. The photos are mostly not as clear as that one, but within about a year and a half, we had identified about 10 fishing cats in the area, and we've been trying to follow them since. And we also got leopard cats. Like Birma was mentioning, the leopard cats are the main wildcat in Singapore. In Cambodia, what happens is that the name becomes confusing. People don't always distinguish fishing cat and leopard cat, and they may call both of them Kla Trey. So if I go to any rural area in Cambodia right now and I ask, do you know Kla Trey? Is there Kla Trey here? They will all say yes. And I will show them the photos, and they might say, yes, we have the big one. But no, that one I'm not sure. It gets really quite confusing. So many people, when you're talking about Kla Trey, they tell us about leopard cat. So what we've got, because of our project, social media and presence on Facebook and so on, are many people giving us reports of leopard cats being held in cages, in restaurants for tourists, or being sold as pets. And then we immediately follow that through with authorities and get someone to go and rescue these leopard cats. And on occasion, we've gone personally to also get these leopard cats, take them to the rescue center, where Wildlife Alliance, the NGO that takes care of rescue, often has the opportunity to release them back into the wild. So on our social media, we've put information like this, trying to promote the fact that wild animals are not pets. What happens with leopard cats is that people may put them into the pet market, or often black market, to eventually breed them together with domestic cats and come up with the Bengal cats. This is a serious threat to leopard cats. Even though they're common, they might be persecuted by this, and they are in danger from these sort of activities. So continuously and eventually we put out this information to make sure that everybody in Cambodia and that's listening to us knows that leopard cats are not pets, and they also belong in the wild, just like fishing cats and all wild animals. The only pets that should be considered are cats and dogs. They really need a home. Every other species is just not a good idea to have as a pet. The mangroves are a beautiful, wonderful place. There are spots like this on the back mangroves where you can find 5, 7, 10 different species of mangrove tree, other accompanying vegetation, wonderful still, transparent waters. We're really happy to be exploring these beautiful areas. This is a drone photo that a colleague has taken recently. The area where we're working, PM Preserve Wildlife Sanctuary, is actually one of the biggest and densest mangrove forests remaining in Southeast Asia. It's a beautiful place that still contains ancient pieces of mangrove, together with parts that the community have helped restore. And the work of communities and authorities here has gone for many years, so that the threat of mangrove deforestation at the core areas is quite low now, but around this protected area, threats are pretty high. When we went back there in 2017, we were so lucky to find the same beautiful fishing cat again. And now, as I promised before, I will show you more camera trap videos of the fishing cat and other species. So just bear with me. I will change my share settings to show you more videos. Okay. Here we go. So again, when we came back in 2017, the same female was here, and this time we placed the cameras differently. So we can actually see how she's leaking all that chemical information that the male left there. This leaking, actually what it's doing is pushing the saliva up the ducts on the palate and taking all that information up the nose into the vomeronasal organ. And this way she's taking all that information in. Here we have someone else is coming to this spot. These are smooth-coated otters. We have really big families of smooth-coated otters here with the young ones as well, calling them really loudly so no one gets lost. We have families up to 15 smooth-coated otters going around, and sometimes they sit here and they just roll around for hours. It's just wonderful to see them swim and to see them rest. We also have the large spotted civet. The civet is also considered endangered, and their favorite habitat is the Malaluca forest. This forest that I told you is quite mysterious and ghostly. They normally move around at night, but we were really lucky to get this day video as well. And this is the hairy-nosed otter. This was taken in 2019. Actually, we were so lucky to see that hairy-nosed otters are breeding there. And this is our most recent video of hairy-nosed otter. This is one of the clearest hairy-nosed otter videos ever. They are considered the rarest otter in the world. People really don't know very much about them. And in the 2000s, they were thought to be extinct. So we feel so lucky that we also have this species in the same protected area where we find the fishing cats. And we've been following the population for a couple of years now. This is how they mark. They put their eyes really high up and have the pull really high up there so that the water won't wash up the marks. Check out how they swim. I really like the way they submerge back into the water. Here we have the leopard cat in another little spot of back mangrove with the beautiful folded kind of flat roots that sometimes make this little spot that animals can use to come and mark. And here the leopard cat is actually looking for rodents. In this spot, I can see many videos of rats just doing their thing, just sniffing and then going into a hole, but the leopard cat realized and it's looking for it. This is a common palm civet. As you can see, I made this video into one of our social media messages because one thing that we find are civet traps that I will explain in detail what they are. But the civets are also breeding here, and I thought this video was just wonderful. I thought the real luxury is to be able to see how wildlife is living in the wild and is reproducing, and these little families go around the forest. Here we have the smooth-coated otters again, but if you see the individual here on the front, actually has a paw that is missing. What I wanted to show here is the fact that snares are still a threat. And some individuals like this otter actually got caught on a snare and lost the paw. Okay. I will go back to my presentation now. that I will show you a photo in more detail now. The problem with snares is widespread in Southeast Asia. It's one of the biggest threats. Snares are, they just don't distinguish species. So any animal, any species can be caught there. Luckily, otters are very strong. So this individual was able to, there we go. Sorry about this slide. Technical stopping there. Not sure what's going on. Please excuse me, I'm gonna have to open the file again because it's somehow getting stuck and not allowing me to open it in the proper presentation mode. Okay, I think that's it. Okay. Okay, I'll do it like this. Okay, so sorry, excuse me for this. There we go. So here you can see the photo more clearly. So he's missing a paw. I'll tell you the positive side of the story now, and is that this same individual I have seen at 4 different camera trap spots and about 15 kilometers away from one another. So he's telling me really interesting things, like the same otter families might be taking up huge expanses of territory, that this animal is actually able to live normally in spite of the injury. He started out with his natal family here playing around. Then he went around on his own for a while, and I was worried, has he been like rejected from the family? Is he having any problems? But he was doing what comes naturally to male otters. They move away from the original family and then start looking for other animals that move from their original families to form a new one. And so later on, he was together with a couple more, and eventually I see that they may have started breeding. So it's actually a happy story of the resilience of these animals, but also a warning of snares still being a danger even within the mangroves. Other threats that we found there are illegal logging in many areas. There's still a little bit of sand dredging but at the local level that might destroy bits of habitat. There are other sorts of traps like bird nets. There's a bit of illegal fishing. And on the right here, these are the civet traps. That's why I was showing the video with the common palm civets. These are actually very ingenious traps set to capture the civets alive, because people want to, these are criminal networks, not necessarily community people. They will pay someone to put these traps and capture the civets alive to sell them to the civet coffee industry, which will then keep the civets in a really small trap, force feed them coffee, and then sell it for ridiculous prices. So never ever buy or drink or promote the Kopi Luwak civet coffee, because it's a criminal activity at so many levels. These traps are put at a certain angle like that with that open bit at the top. On this one, we even found the skull of a civet because people never came to pick it up. And what happens is that the civets climb up this pole, and there is a loop. And when the body goes through the loop and the civet eats the pineapple that is there as bait, another bit of spring will pull and capture the civet body so that it stays captured alive there, but it cannot move. It's very cruel. And in my area, in the last couple of years, it has become a trend, but we were so lucky. At some point, we were there doing work, and I decided to just go kayaking to another stream just for one day that I had off. And I started seeing these traps started taking off these traps, and I realized that people were setting them like minutes before me. I saw the people setting them, but I just looked like a tourist. So I just looked at my phone and continued taking off traps. And I did this for the entire day, took off more than 40 traps on that day. And at sunset, I was still coming out with the kayak, and some other guy was there doing something slightly strange, turned to me and very politely say, "Oh, good evening." I was like, "Oh, good evening." So, but he was doing something a little bit odd. So I continued taking the traps, and I realized that this same very polite boy was the one setting the baits. He was putting the pineapple on the traps as he was going into the stream. So I actually took off all of those traps, and the next day I came back to the spot where I saw this boy with a colleague, and we took out another 40 traps from a trail going into the forest. So it was really, really lucky that we could take out all of those traps. And I think we stopped their intentions for the year last summer. And ever since, we've kept an eye together with the rangers on these spots. And potentially we saved a few civets from going to the trade. Another problem that we find on certain spots in the mangroves is that it's very difficult to control the waste management and the accumulation of plastics. It's not just from the local village or community, because obviously rivers come to this spot, finish in the delta, and the sea also pushes lots of rubbish inside. It becomes a serious problem that still needs to be addressed in several villages, and access to water can also be a serious problem, because obviously it's all brackish water, so fresh water and drinking water can be a problem, and then communities sometimes need to pay for the access, and that gives power to certain people and takes away substance and livelihood from all the people, because they need to pay for the water. So that's something that needs to be addressed in the area. We've been working with the rangers, with the government rangers from the start. We've provided training to be able to track different animals. We've provided GPS units. We work together with them every time we go, and we do patrolling together. And we also work with this NGO called Wildlife Alliance, who are the main supporters of law enforcement in the country. They have hybrid groups with government agents and NGO agents that are some of the most effective in the country. And they also run the rescue center, as I mentioned before. So when there is something that we spot in the area, our colleagues spot in the area that might be a little bit more serious, dangerous, or timely, we can call them and they will come with a stronger team. And throughout 2019, we started noticing the increase in land grabbing in areas around and also within the protected area. So we've provided a number of reports for our contacts in the government to make sure that they are well informed and they can do something about it. So throughout the year, we sent and we presented 3 or 4 of these reports directly to them. And now we've been also supporting their activities more directly and receiving reports of what's been happening. So the rangers and community have been putting signs up to make sure that everybody knows what areas are protected. They've been stopping illegal fishing. When land grabbing happens, what you get is people put coconuts, like on this occasion. They will clear an area and put coconuts to try and claim it as their farm. And the rangers obviously know that this is part of the management zone that says it's a protected area, and they can take out the coconuts and make sure it's not claimed as an area to sell. Many other things have been happening in the mangroves, even people hiding to make sort of drug businesses hidden in the mangroves, some serious offenses because these areas are so remote. These kind of people even had homemade guns, which are now a danger throughout Cambodia. Poachers made these guns to catch all sorts of species for criminal networks. And the authorities have been able to arrest a number of people as well. So we're trying to really support the law enforcement in the area and make sure that the communities have also a say in all this. This year with COVID, obviously things have been more complicated. But at the beginning of the year in February, we were hearing the problem with COVID coming from China. And first of all, that connection to wild species, the wildlife markets, and how poaching and capturing animals and keeping them in horrible conditions and taking them to the wet markets, that's the brewing ground for viruses like COVID. So in February, before any restrictions came into order, we actually made this poster here on the left, which is providing the communities with this advice from the Ministry of Health here in Cambodia, saying to avoid diseases like COVID, we should not be poaching wildlife, we should not be eating wildlife, we should not be handling wildlife in bad conditions. And then what we added is this message at the bottom, which basically is telling local communities in our area, where is the frontier of, whether poaching and is going to happen and go this way, or whether conservation is going to happen and we will be able to keep these animals in the wild. What we say there is that wild animals living free in the forest equals healthy animals and equals healthy people. That was our message this year in February to the local communities, which they understood readily and they were happy to share amongst themselves. Later on in the year, we were not, as outsiders that live in the city, were not allowed to go to the communities, but we provided the local rangers with this poster here on the right that is more hopeful. In the middle of all the COVID crisis, we're reminding of the same message to the communities and telling them, if all together we keep these animals in the wild where they live, right next to you because you know them, we will be able to stop future pandemics. So that's how we've taken the opportunity of COVID to try and get the communities on side to protect these species. And interestingly, in the middle of all of this, at some point, we were told by the rumor mill, our contacts, someone in these communities were trying to sell pangolin, but they were not able to because people were scared of handling them. So there is the chance that this kind of news and the awareness that we've tried to do very directly and connected to this problem may have stopped some of those networks from continuing their functioning, and we may have disrupted some of the poaching activity in the area through all of this. So that would be really great news. One more thing I wanted to tell you about is that around the Tonle Sap, there had never been solid evidence of fishing cat until 2018, where a dead fishing cat was seized from a bushmeat market along the road right next to the Tonle Sap. And we even had the opportunity to do a necropsy on this animal because we had a veterinarian from the Iberian Lynx project in Spain, specialists come and do the necropsy with us. Cambodian students, we all had the opportunity to even see the fishing cat directly there and study its anatomy. It was a healthy male, 17 kilos weight. So here in Cambodia, we may have especially big fishing cats. The hopeful note there is that if we have a young, healthy fishing cat still living in the flooded forest in the Tonle Sap in 2018, they're still likely to be there, but they might be really well hidden. So our intention is to start working there as well. But this year things got stalled a little bit. And this year things also got pretty sad and pretty worrying for the Tonle Sap. As I explained before, the Tonle Sap fills up and swells up because of the water coming from the Mekong River. However, during the last decade, the Mekong River has started becoming full of hydropower dams, especially in China and other Southeast Asian countries, which are retaining more and more water. And then there is less precipitation, less rain. And this year actually is the first year that the flow has not reversed. So on the left, this is 2019, where water was low for the average. And this is this year, this month, the water has no turnaround, has no river. We have no flooded forest. We have no idea how this is going to affect the fish that need to breed there. the fishing cat that lives in the flooded forest, the herring-nosed otters, and smooth-coated otters. But we do know that this affects really dramatically to the communities that survive there thanks to fishing. And fish might need to breed there. So what's happening this year with the breeding season for the fish, we have no idea. So I'm deeply saddened by this, and I hope things change and go back to normal for next year, because if the flood pulse changes and doesn't reverse, this is a huge ecological catastrophe that we're witnessing right now. In the water, in the Tonle Sap, there is another threat, which is the water hyacinth that's clogging the waterways. But last year, we met these companies and WASPA that is proposing to do a bioethanol business. So basically, they have a system that can turn the water hyacinth into bioethanol that can be used for a number of things, including creating alcoholic drinks. So when we heard about this, we thought, okay, this could be a fantastic opportunity to do something useful with an invasive plant, and at the same time, perhaps restore this habitat. So we had this idea of making a Kla Trey gene that would be wildlife friendly, and the benefits would directly go to help the local communities with climate change adaptation and to basically restore the habitat that has been restored with the invasive plants and other threats, and restore them to the flooded forest that they should be. However, because of COVID, this has been stalled with our Japanese counterparts, and we hope to start doing it sometime soon. In the mangroves, however, our project has been really lucky, and we've been working closely with Flora and Fauna International, and we're about to start a big project together with them as partners to strengthen marine protected areas throughout the whole coastline of Cambodia. And so we're going to be able to work much closely with community to improve management, to do more biodiversity monitoring. And this is a large project, 5 years long, that will provide a really, really good baseline, and hopefully allow us to find ways to sustain conservation in the mangroves. So we're really excited to start with all of this. We're now hiring a new Kla Trey team that we're very excited about. And so we're very, very happy to have this in our horizon that's now full of light, like on this picture. And another piece of good news that I can tell you about is that actually the area that we work at is really peaceful, it's easy to visit, has these beautiful guest houses and lodges, including Four Rivers Floating Lodge that we work very closely with. They contribute to conservation through our collaboration, and we sometimes even take customers and tourists to come on an expedition with us. We can even swim in those water. These were the first people to come with us on the expedition. So I invite everyone now to, when restrictions get lowered and people can travel again, I invite you all to come and visit us in the mangroves, because it's a truly beautiful experience that we can take you into those hidden places where the fishing cats live. And with that, I want to say that our work with the fishing cat tries to be an umbrella for these beautiful other species and these beautiful habitats and ecosystems. And the fishing cat is the real tiger of the wetlands here in Cambodia. And that's what we're trying to do, protect these species, but also the whole habitat and all the wonderful species that live together. And I would like to say thank you to our partners, to our funders, and tell you all that if you want to get in touch, you can just write to us directly. We'll be happy to talk about how to do donations to our NGO side, or we will be soon having a more enterprise business side that people can invest in for things like the Kla Trey gene. So if you want to ask something, know anything at all, please get in contact with us directly on this email address. Thanks a lot. I will stop my sharing now, and we can have the Q&A.
Thank you, Vanessa, very much. That was extremely informative, and I love all the camera trap videos. They are so lovely. And I've learned a lot about the fishing cat. And I see that there are a lot of questions that came in through the chat, and then we also got some through the PTEX link. But so let's just go right ahead and get into the Q&A. And I have a first question. So how does a fishing cat fish?
I think fishing cats fish in probably a number of different ways depending on the habitat. In our area, I think they are likely to go around with the water when the water is shallow, and they can walk right on the water and go around looking for those bigger fish that might be coming in at night to these spots of shallow water, and then catching them as they find them. I think they are probably also sitting on the branches of the flooded forest and the mangrove. They might just sit there and wait and see when the fish are coming, and then pounce on the water, which is the same system that they use on in places like India when they're next to India or Nepal, where they sometimes fish on human fish ponds. They just sit there and wait for the fish to come. And I think in our area, they may also be swimming on larger canals like the otters do, and just be swimming and using their whiskers to feel the vibration of the fish. So I think they probably have a number of systems depending on the habitat. But I've been looking for those spots to see them fish, but we haven't really been able to find it because our mangrove is a very natural sort of mangrove and very complex ecosystem for us to get really deep.
Very interesting. Yeah. So it would be great when you guys actually have some video evidence of to further help study how they actually do the fishing. So let's see, Vilma, do you have the second question?
Yes, I do. Vanessa, people want to know what's the estimated population of fishing cat in Cambodia and in the world. And related to that, you know, how do the local community view the fishing cat?
Mm-hmm. Well, here in Cambodia, yeah, we finally found them in this spot in the mangroves, in another mangrove national park, which was going to be converted. And like I said, we suspect they are in the Tonle Sap, and I also suspect they might be around the Mekong. But we have not been able to survey in these areas. No one else has surveyed in these areas before because they are very, very complex. So it's very hard to know. The population that I'm looking at actually is very, very small. They are in one mangrove island that seems to be the real refuge, like I said. But as soon as I put my cameras all around this area, on the mainland, on the back mangroves, I'm not finding them. So there might be, I don't know, between, because this is where I'm trying to point at in my thesis. So I can only give very broad figures. So in the mangroves where I work, there might be up to 30. It's very few. It's very few, but it's probably the most viable population if we manage to have connectivity. In the other areas, hiding, I have no idea, but perhaps we have a total of 100 or 200 fishing cats in all of Cambodia. So it's a very small population, and we seriously need to survey more and find them. Throughout the world, in Thailand, they have a few spots, but the situation might be similar to Cambodia, a few spots that need to be surveyed. One area where they do know that they have a decent population that might be also around the 30 to 50. And there's a new fishing cat project there that is really going to be working to find them. It's in collaboration with Panthera. They're starting a serious conservation program there. So the hopes are high that they'll be able to find more and protect them. And then in Nepal and India and Sri Lanka, the populations are higher and they are in a number of areas. So in total in the world, I will have to check the IUCN red listing, but I might get it wrong. I think we put it in the 20 or 30,000 in total, but a number like the numbers don't actually mean very much if individual populations are at risk, and because it's an animal that will be living in wetlands, and the distribution is not continuous. If you lose a population from a wetland, that's that. They can no longer contribute to the global population. So a large, a number in the tens of thousands doesn't mean a lot. Every single population is important. And you also answer how the community feels. Yeah. In the area where I work, we're really lucky. They're happy to have the Kla Trey. They have even, they tell us stories about their relationship with the Kla Trey, because people go day and night into the mangroves to get different species of crabs. One of the systems is going into the mangrove at night with a large poking thing that they put in a hole, and they kind of kick the ground a little bit for the mangrove, for the crabs to come out. And a local neighbor used to tell us, yeah, and then the fishing cats are around, and sometimes they imitate us. How do they know this? What kind of encounters they've had? I don't know. He just tells us this. Yeah. And then they come and do the same. And they kick on the holes like we do. And sometimes we go getting frogs, and the frogs are very noisy. Go, so they might have them on a bag, and the frogs are noisy. And then the fishing cast follows us to try and get the frogs. So the local communities like the fishing cat. They're a little bit scared. So that's why sometimes you see people going into the mangroves when they go alone, sometimes with dogs. It might be suspicious, they might be hunting. At the same time, using a dog to hunt takes some training. So they might just be going around with dogs because they're slightly scared of fishing cats and they just want to keep them away. So in general, they're happy to have fishing cats. And when we provided the posters, they put them all over the villages. And when they see the camera traps that used to have a message saying this is to research fishing cat, they go, oh yeah, Kla Trey, and they make the gesture, or they say something. They're happy to have Kla Trey there because these local community have done restoration of the habitat themselves, and they're very well aware that they live off the natural resources, the crab and the fish, and they are their livelihood. So a healthy ecosystem with all of its components, including fishing cat, is important to them. So it's as soon as you come out of the deep mangroves that communities may not care so much, and any animal might be game for criminal networks. So in a nutshell, local communities are happy to share the habitat with fishing cat, but there are elements of crime all over.
Thank you. Thanks. It's really heartening to hear that the local community is so involved in their own environment and their own wildlife. Wonderful.
Yes.
Common question from you?
Yeah, okay. So we have a few questions about actually I guess the various, are there different species, subspecies of fishing cat? For example, someone asked, the Cambodian climate is not exactly the same as in Nepal. So are there different species found in different climates all over Asia?
As far as we know, there are no subspecies of fishing cat, but detailed DNA analysis hasn't really been conducted, taking samples from individuals from all the different spots within the range, because it can be complicated. That's, it's more of a technical academic sort of study, and we haven't really had the opportunity to do it. But the state of knowledge right now does not recognize different subspecies. But yeah, it's a good point. Fishing cats living in Nepal might be quite different to fishing cats living in Cambodia. Morphologically, physically, color, and so on, there are no differences. That's why there are no older sorts of subspecies being recognized.
I guess that's what the alliance would you guys would work closely together to perhaps research into that, because the alliance represents different groups in different countries, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's one thing that the alliance together could put someone on this sort of task, and they would have access to every single project and information from the whole range.
That's great. Vilma, next question.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. So another question, does the growth of aquaculture impact the wetlands and habitat of the fishing cats?
Of the fishing cat in general, yes. In Thailand is one of the main reasons why they've become isolated in very small areas, because a lot of the mangrove surface in Thailand has been turned into aquaculture and in stream ponds. In other parts like India, Bangladesh, it is also a big threat as well. In Cambodia, again, we are a bit of an exception for that, because the aquaculture started coming into the area where we work in the early 2000s. It's right in the border with Thailand. So all of that trend came in, and a number of ponds were dug out. The initiatives started, but the technical capacity wasn't there. People hadn't had enough training. They didn't have the right conditions there. And within a couple of years, aquaculture at a larger scale and stream ponds failed completely in Cambodia. And the local communities, local authorities decided that that was not the way to go. And that's when they started restoring the mangroves where we work. So luckily in Cambodia, that is definitely not a threat, because it's not something that is now going to reverse. But in other parts of the range, definitely. And that's something that in Thailand, where the fishing cat populations survive around traditional sort of fish ponds, much like in India, for example, the industrial aquaculture is coming in, and that's something that they're going to have to deal with if they want to have the fishing cat survive there.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa.
Okay. We are almost nearing 12 o'clock, but I think we can run over a little bit if timing is okay with you, Vanessa. We have quite a few questions left. So let's get on to the next one. We have a few questions about the threats facing the fishing cat in Cambodia. So I'll just kind of combine them into the same question. So what are the threats? For example, tourism near Angkor Wat, or people, you know, what are the other predators of fishing cats, and are they, you know, what are they being poached for as food, as pets, like the leopard cat? You know, what do you see as the biggest threat to the fishing cat in Cambodia?
The biggest threat is and has been poaching. Poaching for food mainly, but in the side of subsistence, historically, for the last couple of decades, because of the difficulties that Cambodian people have gone through, poaching, hunting any animal to eat has become almost a culture of rural people, and that has not stopped completely, let's say. And at the same time, the other sort of poaching for criminal networks, for trade and so on, has been coming in. And that poaching for bushmeat has become also a sort of sign of status. So there are certain people within the country that do like to eat wild animals. And it might be, sign of high status. It might be connected to certain properties of the animals. So closer to what we know about people in China or Vietnam that might consider animals to be medicine or to have some other properties. In Cambodia, there's this sort of belief, but it's very slight and it's rare. It's isolated, but it means that people, for example, catching a fishing cat in the Tonle Sap, like the one we found, could sell this animal quite expensive to the right sort of customers. So I believe that's the reason why fishing cats have disappeared or are really hard to find throughout the country. It's been mainly poaching for food for different objectives. In the area where I work and in the areas where we know they are, is because these criminal networks still set up snares, and the snares are indiscriminate. And depending on what they catch, the animals will go to one client or another. So a snare might catch a pangolin. It's a prize animal, and that will end up being sold to the international wildlife crime and eventually go to be sold perhaps in China or Vietnam. But they might catch a fishing cat, and then that might be sold to some restaurant here in Cambodia that has a back door for people to eat the wildlife. So that's the main threat here in Cambodia. But within protected areas, we have the opportunity to stop this through supporting law enforcement, working with rangers, working with communities. And it's important also to help communities adapt to other challenges like climate change, because if livelihoods become really scarce and really really unstable, people might turn to poaching as a source of income, just like they might turn to logging. That is the biggest danger. But population in Cambodia is low, and in general, tourism is positive. Just making a mention of that other question. Around Angkor Wat, fishing cats are no longer right there, but any tourism, international tourism, especially nature tourism, is really positive for Cambodia. There are amazing ecotourism sites throughout the country, and many of them directly support conservation. So that's actually a really good thing, the way tourism is developing in the country.
Yes, that's good to know. But so in general, they're not threatened by, for example, unexploded landmines or the damming of the rivers, not by these threats.
There's very few places remaining in Cambodia where you still have unexploded landmines. So it's not a threat to animals or people very much anymore. There's very few spots, and you wouldn't be allowed to go there, so it's very, very rare. The damming of rivers is a huge threat in the sense that I explained before. Is the huge main Mekong dams that are coming along the river from China onto Thailand, some of them in Laos, like throughout the main course of the river, that are now stopping the water flow to be able to flood the Tonle Sap, and that's a huge ecological disaster. So it's not so much dams within Cambodia. Cambodia has realized now and has put a moratorium. They've decided not to allow any large dams of this sort for the next 10 years. So they're realizing is the problem with the dams upstream of the Mekong really causing really worrying trouble with the ecology of the Tonle Sap.
Okay, I see. Vilma?
Yes. Do you have, Vanessa, any information where the fishing cat day resting sites are in your study area or anywhere else? And so that if you know where the sites are, perhaps they could be protected, day resting sites.
Well, no, to be honest, I haven't found what could be said to be a resting site. I can only hypothesize. They probably just lounge on the trees, this very deep, inaccessible forest. There are areas where lots of people come through, but there are areas where it's virtually impossible to get in. So my hypothesis is that probably they just lie on the branches of the huge mangrove trees and just chill there. Sometimes we have photos and videos during the day, which might mean that they got woken up by people and then just took a little walk and found another spot. But we don't know exactly what those spots are. We need to protect the whole area, where they sleep, where they hunt, where they live, and where we work is all likely to be within this big mangrove island. So we're trying to protect this area really well. And now what we're trying is to study the areas around it and also make sure these are protected as well, so that the animals can eventually expand and disperse onto these areas. But yeah, it would be wonderful to see where they sleep. Actually, one local ranger that's almost a naturalist, he's been around a lot, he told us that they might breed inside tree holes. Yeah, he told us once he found the fishing cat with kittens on this tree hole in the mountain. He said the mountain is another island that we have not been able to explore because so far it was off limits, but we will be able to explore it within the next year. But they might be breeding in tree holes. But we're still discovering the ecology of the fishing cat, to be honest.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Vilma, I think maybe we take two more questions.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of questions here about conservation. So what is the protection status of the fishing cat in Cambodia now, and what is it a priority for the Cambodian government in terms of fishing cat conservation?
Yes, fishing cat is protected in Cambodia. In Cambodia, we have only 3 categories for species, so they might be endangered, rare, or common. The fishing cat has been classed as rare for many years now. So that means it's afforded protection inside protected areas and outside protected areas. Anyone capturing, harming, or trying to sell fishing cat will face very serious fines. It's within the government's sites as a priority species for protected areas like ours. It's mentioned in some of the situational analysis and analysis of vulnerability for climate change plans, for example. The Cambodian government also featured them in a line of post stamps last year. But we need to talk to the Ministry of Environment a little bit more and perhaps come up with a strategic plan altogether, because we haven't really gone talking into detail at the national level, but at the local level of the province where we're working, which contains the mangroves, but is also pretty much the whole cardamom landscape. It's like it's a really huge province with important landscapes and forests. They are very well aware of the fishing cats, and the fishing cat is a priority for them. So we work very closely with the provincial authorities on fishing cat. Hopefully with the national authorities, we will also work soon.
Yeah, we have a question on how can ordinary people like us contribute toward the conservation of the fishing cat in Cambodia? You have any, could you let us know how ordinary people like us can help?
Well, I guess there are many ways. There is the basic, every NGOs, you can donate to us. In fact, now with the Fishing Cat Conservation Alliance, people in the US can donate to a registered NGO with all the legal and tax requirements that there is. So that's one way of doing it very easily in the US, to the Fishing Cat Conservation Alliance. I also have an NGO registered in Spain, so people in Europe could donate to our NGO. You can contact me directly and donate directly to us in a more informal manner, but that would be completely direct. You could talk to us about maybe even investing in our future sustainable programs. If you cannot afford to donate, just following us on social media, sharing all the different information. If you want to go for a holiday, I would say, please visit Cambodia. Come and see the mangroves. You can come with us to these beautiful places and contribute by enjoying being in these areas that are beautiful to see, completely safe. You can enjoy a number of activities. We'll take you kayaking and swimming in the mangroves, and you will be contributing to the project and to the local economies and to the training of local people in doing a number of activities that are different from the traditional. Yeah, there are all of those ways.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, and we have been typing. Our volunteer Rachel has been typing in information in the chat box, so all of you can you will be able to see how to get in touch with Vanessa. Yeah, thanks. That's really good tips for us to help in future.
And I love the fact that ecotourism is helping conservation. That's really wonderful news. And of course, for me, Wildlife Alliance holds a very special place in my heart. So next time, we will plan a trip to go visit them and visit you, and hopefully, we'll meet up in Cambodia. But it's about 12:10 now, so I think we should wrap up our lecture today. So Vanessa, thank you very much for spending time with us and sharing all that you've studied and learned about the Cambodian fishing cat. And I want to thank everybody who have joined us on a Sunday. And I can see that there are audience members from different parts of the world. So this is really wonderful. And again, like Vilma said, check out our links, and we are still going strong, the Swag 100 Challenge. So if you could please support us there, or spread out the word for us. Let everybody know that we're doing this for the Malayan tiger. And now, as we always do, we would like to end the session with a Wi-Fi. So may I ask Marcus, could you do that for us, Marcus?